Hi there, it's Rebecca from Rebecca Art Tutor, back with another video. So my last video was about shape and proportion, and it was based on the idea that we broke objects into shapes, and it was aimed at complete beginners. If you are a complete beginner and you'd really like to learn how to draw and don't know where to start, then this video is an excellent way to start out, and it relates very much to this video that I'm making today. So do go and check that one out first. So we are going to talk about comparative proportions, and we're going to explain what they are and how they can help you to draw more accurately. So let's get into it. So I'm just going to show you my drawing here where I've compared two objects so that I can get across the idea of comparative proportions. Now, just to explain what's happened here, I've lined up two objects at the end of the table, and I have what's called boxed in the space that I feel they take up. And now I'm in the process of just breaking those shapes, sort of getting them roughly drawn out and comparing the two objects. So I'm going to talk through that. Just so you can see the objects that I am drawing, I've picked two simple objects. So if you are completely new to drawing and don't have a huge amount of confidence, these are really simple objects. So I've got a tomato, and I just grabbed this end of a food blender. Work in stages, start with two simple objects and then build up the complexity. So once you've boxed in these objects and sort of broken them into their rough components, and if you're not sure how to do this, then do check out my other video on shape and proportion. This is the stage where you just refine what you've drawn, and it's also the stage where the comparative proportions come in. So this tomato here is, I'm going to look at the heights. So this food blender has sort of this section here where it goes into the sort of blade, and that is quite chunky actually. It takes up about that much space. And then it goes into this sort of key reference point here where it goes into a long kind of tube. And that is something I could look at and draw a line across and see where that is in comparison with the tomato. Now it goes through the tomato, and there's still more tomato over this line. So the top of the tomato is about here. And then I can draw a line across and compare where that is against this object. So we're comparing sort of heights in this case. The other thing I can do is look at where this tomato finishes. Now it comes forward a bit, so it's because it's round like that. So it's probably about there, the baseline. That's where it touches the table. And then I draw that across and I see where that is in comparison with this object. And this object is maybe fractionally more forward than the other one, but they're roughly the same. And it comes out like that. So I compare this baseline here. The other thing that I can compare is heights. So this section here, which is sort of like a fan, round fan shape, sort of like dome-y shape, is, I'm going to draw another line. And because it's round, what I could do is draw a rough ellipses, which is something I do, and I did it in my other video. Now we can't see that, but it just helps you get the shape more accurately. And then we've got this sort of section where these holes appear here. And again, that's a really good part where I can just check where that is against the tomato. Then what I'd like to do is check the width of this here. Where it's widest is at the base. And then check the width of the tomato against it. So it's that wide. Now, roughly, they seem to be quite similar widths. Sometimes intentionally pick objects that are much wider, much taller, very different in shape. It makes this activity a bit easier. When you have two objects that are similar widths, similar heights, it's actually harder. So maybe didn't pick the best objects from that point of view. But they are very similar widths. So I think, how wide is that compared to the width of the tomato? And I think it's roughly about that. Now the next thing is the height of, this is a very tall object. In fact, I think it actually goes right up to the end of the paper. And in fact, I probably haven't left enough room to draw it. So I have to think about the height of this tomato and how tall it is, the height of the tomato and the height of this food processor. So I think that this tomato is a little bit less tall than I first thought, so maybe it's more like that shape. And I think there'd be 3 of these to the top of this. So what I might do is just do it very roughly. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that brings me to the top. So 3 tomatoes worth high, 3.5 I think actually. 3 tomatoes to the height of this. And that means that I am off the paper with the food blender, which happens with these really tall objects. And I should definitely have my paper the other way up. But that's a really good thing to do with comparative proportions, and that is to think how many of these objects high is this object. I've only got a tomato, I've only got so much comparison that I can do, but if I had other objects, like another one here, then I could extend these reference points across to my third object. I hope you found that interesting and useful. I know that for me, I would have really benefited from this video as my younger self starting out in art. And the reason is because I used to totally fixate on one element of the drawing at one time and then move on. And of course I failed to look at the bigger picture, to take that step back and compare each element with each other. And that's what comparative proportions can do. So if you did find it useful and you liked it, please do subscribe, share and like the video, and I shall see you in the next one.